Sakal Gunaadnavasya Vande Guru Sri Charanaravindan.
By devotional service, one can understand that Krishna first of all manifests himself as Svayam Rupa, his personal form, then as Tadakatma Rupa, and then as Avesha Rupa. It is in these three features that he manifests himself in his transcendental form. The feature of Svayam Rupa is the form by which Krishna can be understood by one who may not understand his other features. In other words, the form by which Krishna is directly understood is called Svayam Rupa, or his personal form. The Tadakatma Rupa is that form which most resembles the Svayam Rupa, but there are some differences in the bodily features. The Tadakatma Rupa is divided into two manifestations, the personal expansion, Svamsha, and the pastime expansion, Vilasa. As far as the Avesha Rupa is concerned, when Krishna empowers some suitable living entity to represent him, that living entity is called Avesha Rupa, or Shakti Avesha Avatara. The personal form of Krishna can be divided into two, Svayam Rupa and Svayam Prakasha. As far as his Svayam Rupa, or pastime form, is concerned, it is in that form that he remains always in Vrindavana with the inhabitants of Vrindavana. This personal form, Svayam Rupa, can be further divided into the Prabhava and Vaibhava forms. For example, Krishna expanded himself in multiple forms during the rasa dance in order to dance with each and every gopi who took part in that dance. Similarly, he expanded himself into 16,108 forms in Dvaraka when he married 16,108 wives. There are some instances of great mystics expanding their bodily forms by the yoga process, but Krishna did not expand himself in that way. In Vedic history, Saubhari expanded himself into 8 forms by the yoga process, but those expansions were simply reflections, for Saubhari remained one. But when Krishna manifested himself in different forms, each and every one of them was a separate individual. When Narada Muni visited Krishna at his different palaces in Dvaraka, he was astonished at this. And yet, Narada is never astonished to see the expansions of a yogi's body, since he knows the trick himself. Srimad Bhagavatam describes Narada Muni's astonishment at seeing Krishna's expansions in Dvaraka. Narada wondered how the Lord was present with his queens in each and every one of his 16,108 palaces. With each queen, Krishna himself was in a different form, acting in different ways. In one form, he was talking with his wife. In another form, he was petting his children. And in yet another form, he was performing some household duty. These different activities are conducted by the Lord when he is in his emotional forms, known as Vava Prakasha expansions. Similarly, there are other unlimited expansions of Krishna's forms. But even when they are divided or expanded without limit, they are still one and the same. There is no difference between one form and another. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that when Akrura was accompanying Krishna and Balarama from Gokula to Mathura, he entered the waters of the Yamuna River and could see all the planets of the spiritual sky. He also saw the Lord in his Vishnu form, as well as Narada and the 4 Kumaras, who were worshipping him. As stated in the Bhagavat Purana, the Supreme Lord's many worshippers, the Vaishnavas or Aryans, are purified by the various processes of worship they perform according to their convictions and spiritual understanding. Each process of worship involves understanding different forms of the Lord, as mentioned in the scriptures, but the ultimate idea is to worship the Supreme Lord himself. In his Vaibhav Prakasha feature, the Lord manifests himself as Balarama. The Balarama feature is as good as Krishna himself, the only difference being that Krishna's bodily hue is blackish and Balarama's is whitish. The Vaibhava Prakasha form was also displayed when Krishna appeared before his mother Devaki in the 4-handed form of Narayan, just when he entered the world. Then, at the request of his parents, he transformed himself into a 2-handed form. Thus, he sometimes manifests 4 hands and sometimes 2. The 2-handed form is Vaibhava Prakasha, and the 4-handed form is Prabhava Prakasha. In his personal form, Krishna is just like a cowherd boy, and he thinks of himself in that way. But when he is in the Vasudeva form, he thinks of himself as the son of a kshatriya and feels like a kshatriya, a princely administrator. In his two-handed form, as the coward son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna fully exhibits his opulence, beauty, wealth, attractiveness, and pastimes. Indeed, in some Vaishnava literature, it is found that sometimes, in his form as Vasudeva, he becomes attracted to his form of Govinda in Vrindavana. Thus, as Vasudeva, he sometimes desires to enjoy as Govinda does, although the Govinda form and the Vasudeva form are ultimately one and the same. In this regard, there is a passage in the Lalita Madhav, 4.19, in which Krishna addresses Uddhava as follows. My dear friend, the form of this coward boy Govinda attracts me. Indeed, I wish to be like the damsels of Raja, who are also attracted by this form of Govinda. Similarly, later in the Lalita Madhav 8.34, Krishna says, Oh, how wonderful it is! Who is this person? After seeing him, I am so much attracted that I now desire to embrace him just like Radhika. There are also forms of Krishna that are a little different from his original form, and these are called Tad Ekama Rupa forms. These may be further divided into the Vilasa and Svamsha forms, which in turn have many different features and can be divided into Prabhava and Vaibhava forms. As far as the Vilasa forms are concerned, there are innumerable Prabhava Vilasas, headed by Krishna's expansions as Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Sometimes the Lord thinks of himself as a coward boy, and sometimes he thinks of himself as Vasudeva's son, a Kshatriya prince, and this thinking of Krishna is called his pastimes. Actually, he is in the same form in his Vaibhava Prakasha and Prabhava Vilasa, but he appears differently as Krishna and Balarama. His expansions as Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are the original Katarvyuha, or four-armed forms. There are innumerable four-armed manifestations in different planets and different places. For instance, they are manifested in Varaka and Mathura eternally. From the four original four-handed forms are manifested the 24 principal four-armed forms, which are called Vaibhava Vilasa. They are named differently according to the placement of the conch, club, lotus, and disc in their hands. The same four principal manifestations of Krishna are found on each planet in the spiritual sky, known as Narayana Loka or Vaikuntha Loka. In Vaikuntha Loka, Krishna is manifested in the four-handed form of Narayana. From each Narayana are manifested the forms of Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Thus, Narayana is the center, and the four forms of Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha surround the Narayana form. Each of these four forms again expands into three, and these all have different names, beginning with Keshava. These forms are 12 in all, and, again, they are known by different names according to the placement of the symbols in their hands. As far as the Vasudeva form is concerned, the three expansions manifested from him are Keshava, Narayana, and Madhava. The three forms expanded from Sankarshana are known as Govinda, Vishnu, and Sri Madhusudana. It should be noted that this Govinda is not the same Govinda manifested in Vrindavana as the son of Nanda Maharaj. Similarly, from Pradyumna expand the three forms known as Trivikram, Vamana, and Sridhara, and the three forms expanded from Aniruddha are known as Hrishikesha, Padmanabha, and Damodara.